And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Big Blue Avenue here live on this afternoon. And I got to tell you guys, I'm very, very interested to see what happens in the coming days regarding Giants right guard Kevin Zeitler. I do not agree. I'm going to come straight out and say that I don't necessarily agree with cutting him because this is a guy who started all 16 games for us last year. He played 93% of the offensive snaps, and now the Giants cut Kevin Zeitler. They would save $12.5 million if he is released, but that would create $2.5 million in dead money. So in hindsight, you take those numbers away, that's about $10 million. So I think what the Giants should do with Kevin Zeitler, look, we don't want Daniel Jones entering a gulag in 2021. Kevin Zeitler is our most experienced offensive lineman. He's not an excellent player, but he's a really good player that I want to keep on our roster. I think what we should do is extend him another year or two, which will lower his cap hit for 2021. So if you extend his contract, it would make a lot more sense where you're lowering his pay this year to about 8 to 9 million, maybe instead of 12.5 million. It just makes a lot more sense to me. Kevin Zeitler also turns 31 years old on Monday, so I do understand the concerns. But for me, I'm not in that crowd. I think guys, regardless of their age on this offensive line, are going to be good. We saw, David Deal played into his 30s. We've had good players in the past. So I think Kevin Zeitler at 31 years old, I mean, look, we can use him for another 2 to 3 years. I think this is a guy you want to keep. You don't want to get rid of him. I do think if the Giants decide to move on from somebody, it should be Nate Solder. Now, releasing Nate Solder won't free up as much money as releasing Kevin Zeitler would. Now, back in 2018, we signed Nate Solder for a 4-year, $62 million contract. And that was a lot of money. It's crazy. That very, very large contract. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that was the highest contract for a left tackle ever at that time. But yeah, so here's the problem. If he's on the books for 2021, Nate Solder, that is, he'd be 16.5 million in our salary cap. So that's definitely not a good sign, especially for a guy who opted out in 2020 due to COVID-19. So if the Giants release Nate Solder, we would create $6 million in cap space because we'd accumulate the $10.5 million in dead money. But we don't want him to account for $16.5 million on our salary this year. Nate Solder will be turning 33 in 2021. So he is a much older player. If you want to keep him as a swing tackle and try to restructure, I mean, that could be an option. That's not what I would do. I would sign a cheaper one in free agency and release Nate Solder and have Matt Parrott be the starting right tackle. Or if you can upgrade and have Parrott be that swing tackle for another year and get an upgrade at right tackle. So, yeah, I think that's the way to go. Kevin Zeitler, though, I think we must keep him on that right side, especially, and a lot of people don't think about this. If you want Matt Parrott to be your right tackle, don't you want a veteran playing next to him? You release Kevin Zeitler. That affects Nick Gates, that affects Matt Parrott, and it affects Andrew Thomas, 3 really young players on that offensive line. So that's what I find interesting. I would rather keep Zeitler, lessen his salary for 2021, and release Nate Solder. Now, as much as I like Nate Solder as a person, but now I want to move on to Will Hernandez. Demoted by Joe Judge in 2020, Hernandez started the first 7 games of the season before he had a 2-week stint on the COVID-19 list. And when he came back, Shane Lemieux played well enough to the point where they were pretty much splitting reps the rest of the way. Hernandez played very sparingly after that. His play kind of declined this past year. If the Giants are convinced that Shane Lemieux is an upgrade, then the Giants could potentially cut Hernandez. I know they only saved $2.2 million. They'd create, I believe, just under $900,000 in dead money. So you can release Will Hernandez to free up another $1 million plus in cap. But I think Will Hernandez should not be released. I think Hernandez and Lemieux right now, I mean, it seems to be seen what will happen for the Giants at left guard. But we can't really go anywhere until we free up enough cap space. And if it does mean releasing Kevin Zeitler, then I'd expect the Giants to go for a guard, whether it's in free agency or the NFL draft in the early rounds. I know guard out of Ohio State, Wyatt Davis, has been a popular name that's been tossed around. I think he would be an excellent fit for this scheme. I think he would be a younger version of Kevin Zeitler. In fact, his pro player comparison was Kevin Zeitler. So I think that would be really interesting to monitor. And now as far as the rest of the offensive line goes, I think Andrew Thomas is your left tackle for next year. That's not a question. Nick Gates is your center for next year. Now, if you want to draft the center and move him to guard, then we can have that discussion once we cross that bridge. But right now, he's our starting center for 2021. And our right tackle, I don't see us re-signing Cam Fleming. I think Matt Peart's our guy. The question is, do we really want to put another young player in between Gates and Peart on that line, who are both young players, and then you have Thomas on the left side? So do you want a fourth young player on that offensive line, or do you want a veteran in there? Guys, you need veterans on your roster. And I understand teams are dipping and dunking players. You're going to see a lot of it over the next week. A lot of veterans are going to be released that are going to upset a lot of fan bases. The Giants are not the only team going through it. They're not. Other cut candidates that I could see besides Kevin Zeitler, kind of to back up my argument a little bit, is I think Levine Toilolo, a blocking tight end who could save us almost $3 million in cap. Cody Core, $2 million. That would be an excellent move. So you cut those two, you're looking at about an additional $5 million. Isaac Yadam would be $2.2 million with no cap hit. Dante Pettis would be just under $1.5 million, so around 1.3, 1.35. So right there then, and you're looking at about now almost $9 million just in those moves alone. And Elijah Penny, who, is the self-proclaimed fullback of the team, he's done a good job blocking, but the Giants don't use him that much. I think if you move on from him, you could save up another $1 million. So it'll be interesting to see what the Giants do. I think Kevin Zeitler should stay. I think we need to restructure his deal before, things get too late. We're getting close to free agency, so it's going to be a lot of fun to see what happens with these Kevin Zeitler rumors. Remember to give us a follow on our social media platforms here at Big Blue Avenue on Instagram and Twitter. I will be going live with Hank and Dichter and Sam Cardona from the Girl Who Talks Sports podcast Wednesday night, March 10th at 8 p.m. Eastern time. That's going to be a lot of fun. I wanted to thank all you viewers. And if you guys like what you hear, remember to smash the like button, subscribe, maybe give us a little thumbs up. Really appreciate you all for watching this today and hope you all have an awesome weekend. And let's go Giants.